What's going on, everybody? I'm Jory Goodman, the Time Teller. So if there's one constant contender for the watch versus watch series, it must be the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical, and for good reason, because, you know, this is pretty much the quintessential field watch, and as we all know, field watches make for a very good everyday piece, and it's very reasonably priced as well. Not only is it well under $1,000, very often you can find this watch for under $500, so it's a very easy gateway for people's first, I don't know, entry-level Swiss-made everyday piece. I think it's a great watch. Now, it makes sense. People want to see how it stacks up to other seemingly similar watches, and that's why today we're going to take a look at a very highly requested comparison, the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical versus the Orient Defender. Both of them are field watches, both of them are very affordable. Obviously, one's a bit more affordable than the other, but how do they stack up? Let's take a look. It's 1:38 p.m. Let's get down to business. Okie dokie, guys, so I'm very excited for this comparison because I have a bit of a fetish when it comes to field watches, and I'm not ashamed of it, okay? If you want to see every single field watch I currently own, click the top right corner and check out the first installment of my State of the Collection series. I own a whole lot of field watches. They're probably my favorite type of watch at the moment. They're just simple, durable, easy to wear everyday pieces, and that's why I love both of these watches right here. But first impressions, you know, one seems a bit bigger than the other, one seems a bit simpler than the other, but there are other things that might not initially jump out at you, like the price, okay? This Hamilton floats around $500, whereas this Orient Defender, I think I got it for like $140 on Amazon, so substantially more affordable, and yeah, it gives you a bit more information just judging by the dial. But we're gonna go over all the differences and how they stack up in this episode. Let's first go over the measurements, because I think that's kind of the first thing people will notice when I put these watches head to head. The Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical just seems a lot smaller, but let's go ahead and either confirm or deny that with my digital calipers. Wouldn't be a Time Teller episode without these babies. Guys, I have links to this product in the description below. This is a watch enthusiast's best friend. This is under $10 on Amazon. Check it out. Again, everyone needs one of these. All right, here it is. Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical 38 millimeter. That's part of the name of the watch. So let's actually see if it is 38 millimeters. So at the widest point, excluding the crown, let's see, 38.2. I'm sure there's a place I could put this tool to get it to 38 on the button. Yeah, right here, 38 on the button. Let's do lug to lug, because lug to lug is far more important of a metric when it comes to how a watch will wear on your wrist. 47.3 millimeters. Yep, 47.3. And then here's probably the most impressive measurement when it comes to this watch. It's incredibly thin at only 9 millimeters. So yeah, mechanical watch, 9 millimeters, very low profile, incredibly flat. Exactly how a field watch should be, so it doesn't get caught up on any straps or any gear or anything that you're carrying while you're hiking around in the field. This is just an incredibly proportioned watch. That's why I think it's everyone's favorite when it comes to, you know, an everyday field watch. Now let's go ahead and measure the Orient Defender. Yes, we can see immediately this is a bit bigger, but how much bigger exactly? I do not know. So excluding that crown, again, at the widest point, let's go ahead and check. So this is 42 millimeters in diameter, but let's check the lug to lug. 48.1 lug to lug. Now let's check moving away that leather from the bund strap. 11.8. Now guys, this brings us to the first difference. This Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical right here was 9 millimeters thin. This is an automatic, okay? And it's a little bit thicker at, what was that, 11.8? Very, very reasonable for an automatic movement, if I do say so myself. So both of these watches will lay very flat on your wrist. None of them, as far as the measurements go on paper, are very cumbersome or, you know, too obtuse or obtrusive on the wrist. They just both seem very flat and out of the way, again, on paper. But let's go ahead and put them on the wrist. Okay, so here's the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical on my 7.5-inch wrist. Again, very, very flat. You practically do not even know you're wearing a watch. And I mean that in a good way. It doesn't feel cheap, it doesn't feel like a toy, it just feels exactly how a field watch should be. Again, if I'm putting on jackets, taking off jackets, picking up a rucksack, pulling it off of myself, this watch is not going to get hung up on anything. And believe me, I like to go camping. We actually just got back from camping over the long weekend here, and yeah, I was wearing this watch because I didn't want to get caught on anything, and it's just fun having the right tool for the job, let's face it. But yeah, feels great. This watch is currently on a Wrist Candy Watch Club sand color nylon strap, a 2-piece strap, and special thanks to Wrist Candy Watch Club for being a sponsor of my channel. Absolutely, absolutely love their products. But let's go ahead and throw on the Orient Defender and see if this bigger boy feels a bit more bulky. How's that for alliteration? Bigger boy feels a bit more bulky. Bigger boy feels a bit more bulky. Bigger boy feels a bit more bulky. Say that 5 times fast in the comment section. All right, so here's the Orient Defender on my 7.5-inch wrist. Now, this might not be a totally accurate comparison when it comes to wrist feel, because this is obviously sporting a bun strap, which has a lot more material than, you know, your basic nylon strap, but still, all things considered, incredibly comfortable, not at all cumbersome, lays very, very flat on the wrist, and yeah, of course, the bun strap will add a bit more cushion, and that's kind of the point of a bun strap. So if this watch gets very, very hot or very cold, you will not be irritating the skin on your wrist. And yeah, just real quick, Man Cave Leather made me this bun strap. They are not a sponsor of mine, but they are absolutely a very, very strong supporter of everything I do. And I really, really thank Mikola over there for making me incredible leather straps. They are by far my favorite leather strap company. Man Cave Leather, please go check them out and tell them I sent you, because they do incredible work. But yeah, both of these watches so far feel incredibly, I don't know, just kind of light and easy to wear and not at all bulky. And that's what I want from an everyday piece, and that's especially what I want from a field watch specifically. Okay, so we've gone over the measurements and we've gone over how it feels on the wrist, and we've also mentioned that one watch is a bit more expensive than the other, so it's time to look at the spec sheet, because again, there are a few differences that might not immediately be apparent between these two watches. So first, let's talk about this Orient Defender, okay? This Orient Defender is powered by an in-house 46B40 automatic movement with 21 joules, okay? You can see it's not sweeping as smoothly as this Hamilton Khaki Field Watch, because this Orient Defender is sweeping at a 21,600 BPH, whereas the frequency on the Hamilton is 28,800 BPH, which technically puts it at a high beat rate. Now, the Hamilton, on the other hand, is, I guess, technically not an in-house movement, although it is a Swatch Group movement. It's powered by an ETA 28012 manual 17 joule movement. Again, Swiss-made 46-hour power reserve. Now, they recently have come out with a even more modern version of this watch that has an 80-hour power reserve, and it has their, you know, in-house quote-unquote movement. And they also have a newer variant of the Orient Defender, which they call the Orient Defender 2, which I think doesn't look as good, and it has some other things I don't like about it. But again, we're comparing these two watches right here because you guys have asked me to look at these two watches. Now, there are some other differences when it comes to the movement and functionality of these watches. So first impressions, this Orient Defender looks more complicated, like literally, it has more complications. We have a date window down here by the 6 o'clock, very tastefully done. We have a day dial, and we have a 24-hour indicator, excuse me. Here at the Hamilton, we don't have any complication. Like literally, there are no complications here. Really, the only markings that you can see on the dial that I guess you could argue make it a bit more dynamic would be the 24-hour markings, and that's about it. There are some other things that might be a make or break for some people out here. This Hamilton, it is known as the hack watch. Why would it be called the hack watch? Well, as you can see, both of these second hands are synced up, but the second that I pull this crown out, the second hand will stop. And that's because this watch hacks, okay? This Orient Defender doesn't hack, and guess what? Doesn't even hand wind. That was a little bit of a quirk for me to get over when I first got that watch, because another thing is that the date does quickset, but the day does not. So you have to cycle around the whole dial to get to the proper day. It's a little bit of, I don't want to say a headache, but it's definitely something to get used to. So if you want literally a set it and forget it watch, you might want to pick this Hamilton. If you really need a watch that you can sync up those second hands, and boy, I know people are going to complain about these second hands not being synced up anymore. If you need that capability, this Orient Defender, the original version, is not the one to go with. This Hamilton is. Also, it's something to consider when we're looking at price. This Hamilton has a sapphire crystal, whereas this Orient, mineral crystal. Am I terribly worried about that? Not really, but you know, you are getting a little bit of a more robust build when we're looking at sapphire. Here is something that is a bit more of a make or break for me, okay? Because when we're looking at the specs one-to-one, the Hamilton might seem a bit more impressive. You know, ETA movement, Swiss made, it hacks, it has a sapphire crystal. This Orient doesn't have that, might seem a bit more rudimentary, even though, you know, we're getting a whole lot more information. We're getting a day, a date, and 24-hour dial. We're also getting a threaded crown and a 100-meter water resistance rating. That is huge for me, guys. That is huge. This Hamilton only has a 50-meter water resistance rating, and I know people are going to be like, oh, well, how often do you go 50 meters underwater? That's not how water resistance works, but I digress. The truth is, I feel a lot more comfortable getting a watch with a threaded crown wet. That's just how it is. And I understand, if the watch is healthy and has good gaskets, a threaded crown is not necessarily needed for, you know, added water resistance, but it is needed for an added robust build, because once the crown is affixed to the case, if you knock it, it's much less likely for the crown stem to break inside the movement. Also, it's much less likely for the crown to open up underwater. So threaded crown, twice as much water resistance than the Hamilton, and it being, you know, a lot more affordable than the Hamilton. If you're looking for an actual watch that you really do want to beat the crap out of, the Orient might actually be a better buy. But let's take it a little bit closer. Let's look a little bit closer at some of the other attributes, some of the dial markings, and maybe even the lume. All right, as we get in close with the macro lens, we can see this watch is just incredibly well thought out. You know, for as affordable as it is and as busy as this dial is, I mean, it's definitely asymmetrical, but it's just so well thought out, and the layout is still quite pleasing to the eye. You still get all the information you need, and it's not really a hindrance as far as reading the time or having to see any of the dials. Again, these big broad hands with a whole bunch of lume on them. We're going to do a side-by-side lume comparison for sure in a moment. It's just very, very easy to read, and the legibility is huge when we're looking at a field watch, when we're looking at an everyday piece. I mean, gosh, you gotta tell the time, right? And then when we move on to the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical, I'm kind of enamored by it for a totally different reason, perhaps the opposite reason. This is not a futuristic dynamic dial. This is actually as simple as it gets, right? I mean, this is modeled after a World War II watch, a Vietnam watch. This is a watch that has gone through many wars and conflicts, and it's literally just there to do a job, and that's it. No bells and whistles. I really, really appreciate that. especially with this iteration of the Hamilton Khaki Field Watch. As we can see, it looks like the Arabics are almost drawn on. There's really not that much branding. Of course, it says Hamilton, and aside from that, there's a little itty-bitty Swiss made, but no date window anywhere, no dials anywhere, no small seconds, just a very simple, cleanly executed watch with a very smooth, sweeping second hand. I don't know what's better than that, guys, when we're looking at a field watch. Is this as good as it gets? I mean, it's incredible. As I've always said, this is the gold standard when we're looking at field watches. Okay, guys, so I don't know if I could complain about these watches enough to like warrant one of them leaving my collection, because obviously they're both in my collection and I love them dearly, but I think they each have their own strengths and weaknesses, and because this is a watch versus watch, we do have to go over that. And I think they're kind of self-explanatory at this point. Like, I've kind of touched upon them already, but let's break it down a bit. If you're looking for an incredibly reliable, solid Swiss-made field watch from a company that has immense pedigree, that makes probably the most prolific field watch ever, then the Hamilton is obviously your go-to, okay? This watch, I mean, I don't know how you can think of a more field watchy field watch. But there are some downsides. Again, especially when we're looking at these two watches next to each other, this Hamilton, it's around $500 versus this Orient that's around $140. The Hamilton also doesn't have a threaded crown and doesn't have all that impressive of a water resistance rating. Also, doesn't have any complications at all. But for the reasons I just listed, that might be the reason you want it, right? No bells and whistles, tells the time, looks incredibly handsome, and you don't have to muck around with any silly complications. And if you're looking to get into your first really impressive field watch that you can wear every day, this Hamilton, again, something to consider. And then we move on to the Orient Defender. Sure, it's not Swiss made, it's not part of Swatch Group, it doesn't have the panache or the pedigree that Hamilton might, and it's not super duper well known for making incredibly prolific field watches that have been through numerous conflicts throughout history. But if you don't think you can beat it up, you're wrong. This watch is incredibly tough. A threaded crown, a 100-meter water resistance rating, and incredibly robust movement. This watch is probably even more durable than the Hamilton beside it. But it's not without its own downfalls, okay? Kind of a quirky setting function, no hacking, no hand wind. The date is quick set, but the day isn't. It's just a little bit more of a process than a lot of people want to go through. And again, the Defender version 2 solves that, but it has other things I don't like. It has a 3 o'clock crown instead of a 4 o'clock crown. It has a date window in a different area versus this very neat and tidy 6 o'clock date window. So still, when we're looking at Orient Defenders, I think the original is the one to get, but we're not looking at Orient Defender versus Orient Defender. We're looking at Orient Defender versus Hamilton Khaki Field Watch. Now here comes the conundrum. Do you want to spend $500 on a Swiss-made, prolific field watch with a ton of history and some really nice specs and materials? Or do you want to spend a lot less than that and get an incredibly durable watch from a company that, sure, isn't Swiss-made, but has a lot of information, a lot more complications, and you know, it's a little bit more resilient, maybe? I guess I can't decide that, and I'm just gonna keep both. But seriously, guys, all jokes aside, I don't think you can go wrong picking either of these. I know a lot of my viewers actually do own both of these, and for good reason. Again, the Hamilton is a great everyday watch, but the Orient is a watch that you can actually go out and beat up and not really feel bad about. So I'd love for you to help me out with this conundrum. Please, in the comment section, sound off. I know that these are fairly common watches, so I'm sure a bunch of you guys watching this right now have some experience with some iteration of these two watches. So please, again, leave me that comment and give me some perspective, and maybe we can figure out which one is the better buy in the comment section, and maybe we'll even do a follow-up episode. How about that? Guys, thanks for sticking around for another very fun watch versus watch episode. Again, I have a full playlist dedicated to watch versus watch. Click the top right corner and check that out. The Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical is in a lot of those episodes because it's a very popular watch. Maybe I'll find a watch that once and for all stomps this thing. But for now, it's still a contender, man. Guys, thank you. Check out all the links in the description below. I'll leave links to both of these watches there. Again, shopping using those affiliate links helps the channel out a bunch. Join the channel membership program, become a certified T3 bot. We don't use Patreon. $4.99 a month makes you a YouTube channel member. For my channel, we get the vast majority of our support from my certified T3 bots. You get 6 pieces of content a week and access to the members only Discord chat where we have fun 24/7. It's a crazy group of guys, just a bunch of knuckleheads, and a very easy way to interact with me. Also, check out www.thetimetellershop.com. That's the #1 place to find affordable vintage luxury watches serviced with a 1-year warranty. We sell out every week, so please check back. Yeah, guys, like, comment, subscribe, share this with everyone you know. I'm Jory Goodman, the Time Teller. Always remember, I didn't invent time, I just tell it.